For today's exercise, we're going to swatch our watercolors. So we're going to use our regular sketchbook. We are not using watercolor paper. We are using regular drawing paper in your sketchbook. If you have mixed media paper, even better, use that. It'll hold up better to the water. We're not working on watercolor paper today, but it's going to show you the colors enough. We don't want to waste the watercolor paper until we are, more so painting. So you're gonna need 2 containers of water, okay? So go get cups from your kitchen or whatever leftover Polar Pop cup you have. You need 2 cups of water, 1 to rinse, and then 1 to keep clean. I just pulled an onion out of my mouth, so that's fun. We'll see if I edited that out or not. Your sketchbook. Paper towel, always when you're working with watercolor, have a paper towel next to you so you can dry your brushes, dry your paper. If you make a mistake, you can really quick grab it and kind of lift it up. And then we're going to use our watercolor palette today. So I want you to carefully take your empty palette off. And you should have these dried blobs of liquid watercolor. So this one is broken. Is it dried and came off the plastic? But that's okay. It's still perfectly good paint to use. When we use those praying palettes, the paint has already been poured into it, but it was a liquid at one point and then it has dried. All watercolors operate the same. We're going to use the outside of this in our sketchbook paper to create a circle. And then in between those 2 dots, we have these 2 dots here. I want you to make a little dash in between those 2 dots around the outside of your circle. And all those dots, okay? And then you can go ahead and lift your palette up. Then you're going to take your ruler and you are going to connect opposite lines straight across, right? So line up those dashes with each other. They should all cross at the same point in the middle. If you have something off, then you are connecting the wrong line. And so we should have as many pie slices as we have colors in our palette. And we have 10 colors and 10 pie slices. So that should work really well. Inside these pie slices, I'd like you to create another triangle, leaving a little bit of border, okay? All the way around. Now in these triangles that we have drawn, we are going to do color swatches using the order that our palette is in. Now most people's are close to the same order, but I didn't pour them all exactly the same, so it's okay if yours looks different than mine, and it's okay if yours looks different than your friends. But what I need is your representation of your colors in your sketchbook needs to match the order that they're in your color wheel. So how you can do that is you can take the brightest yellow and the brightest red. Let's kind of decide. That brightest yellow is called lemon yellow. So we're going to use that one first. and it is very recognizable from the other colors on your palette. So go ahead and label your lemon yellow one on the outside of your circle. I'm going to want to call this a color wheel. It's not a color wheel because it's not technically the right order, but you get an idea. So with your watercolor palette, you're going to create swatches in each color, and we want our swatches to go from dark to light as well. So I'm going to go ahead and undo my brushes. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to constitute my colors. So right now all of my colors are dry. I'm going to try and put this vermilion back together in a way that it was when I poured it. There's my blob. See, like a little puzzle. Okay. I'm going to take my water and I'm going to put some water, like 3 drops of water in each thing. I'm just using the sides. I don't want to touch the paint with my brush, so I want to keep my brush clean for now. So that kind of makes the water and you can see that when these get wet, well, it's kind of hard to see in my video, but those will start constituting into actual colors. If you have a little spray bottle of water, that's kind of an easier way to go about doing it. So you can see, maybe, kind of how the paint looks a little different where it's starting to get wet. The pigment is coming back to life. And in each pie slice, okay, so I want you to stay within the triangles that you drew. So we're going to keep this, the paper. I don't want your colors running into each other. We're going to create a graded wash. How you do a graded wash in watercolor is by first taking your brush of clean water and first painting clean water within the shape. I am using my kind of fattest round brush. I like a round brush in watercolor better, but you can use whatever you want. And then what I'm going to do is over on my palette, I'm going to take my lemon yellow. I'm going to mix it in with that water. I don't want too much pigment. I don't want too much water. So see how I'm taking that brush kind of right on the side until I have a strong mixed up yellow. Then I'm going to put that bright color on the outside edge and slowly bring my brush down until it fades. Okay, so see how that's kind of fading. You want the top of your pie slice to show the pure pigment. So you want that top to be very, very bright. You can kind of see the wetness if I turn that light on. I don't want your paper buckling or pooling too much, so if it's getting too wet, you know, stop and let it dry a little bit, or use your other paper. So I'm going to rinse in this bowl and keep my glass of clean water. And then I'm going to go around to my next one. And I want you to go in the order of your palette. So I don't care if it's not the same as mine. Whatever's next to your lemon yellow, that's the one you're putting right here. Okay, so this is going to be swatches for your palette. Okay, so I'm going around the circle the same way. Get it wet first. Lay it in there. You gotta work kind of quickly before it dries so we get that nice fade. And then go ahead and keep putting more down at the top. We want them to be nice and vibrant in color. If you know what makes it easier for you guys to see. So then that's my yellow ochre. Okay, you can see my lemon yellow is kind of drying a little bit. You can also see that as it dries, those colors start to even out. The pigment starts to spread out in the wetness of the paper. I have too much pigment in my brush, so I'm wiping it off on my paper towel so that can still fade. I was getting too red too far. And I can go ahead and lay more here. It's okay if your paper's buckling and warping. We're not using watercolor paper. The drawing paper will warp more than this. More than watercolor paper, at least. Make sure you're using your clean water for every new slice. And if you accidentally contaminate your water, you should get new water. Dump it out, rinse it out, make it clean again. Okay, don't just use dirty water because you're lazy. You need to kind of mix that paint in. This water was kind of just sitting outside that dot, so I'm kind of stirring it in until I have that nice vibrant color. Notice how I'm not really picking up my paintbrush. I'm connecting all my brush strokes so they come out really smooth. That's why we wanted to have the spaces in between so we can make mistakes without completely making them all blur in together. You might also notice that as you put colors down, color can travel, pigment can travel through the areas that you've already painted with water. It's like when you put a drop of food coloring in a cup of water. Eventually the food coloring spreads to all of it. Okay, I got kind of this puddle here, so I'm going to take my brush, dry it off, wipe it on my paper towels so that puddle won't stay there. If you get too big a puddle, go ahead and soak it up. As you go around, if you look and you notice, oh, all my pigment is drying like in one place in this one, I can take a little bit more of that color while it's still wet. I'm going to pull it back the other way so I can layer more of those colors on. So you can really see the color. You want to be able to see the pigment that you are painting. Okay, so my violet hasn't really blended together. See, the water is kind of still separated. So I'm going to take my brush and I'm just going to swirl that around. As the water swirls over the dried paint, that will continue to liquefy, and then I can paint. Then, once you have your whole wheel painted, then I want you to label the colors. Now, color is a little more complicated than it normally is. Okay, so we have a list of colors in your slides, and I want you to know kind of which red is which red, which blues which blue, which greens which green, which yellows which yellow. Lemon yellow is the brightest yellow. Okay, it is close to maybe what we used to consider as primary yellow. Okay, it is also a cold yellow. Okay, the other kind of yellow that's kind of orangey yellow is called yellow ochre. Okay, it is a warmer yellow. The brighter red, the red that's closer to like neon red or closer to primary red, is called brilliant red. The red that's a little cooler or a little closer to purple is crimson red. Okay, it's a little more maroon, a little darker. Crimson red. Okay, so we have our cool red and our warm red, our warm yellow and our cool yellow. The blue that is basic, okay, this blue that looks like it has a little bit of green in it, the more basic, purest blue is ultramarine. Ultramarine blue. Okay, violet's violet. That one's easy. The bright green, the really, really grass green, is called sap green, S-A-P green. And these two colors are kind of similar, okay? We have a tealish looking green and a tealish looking blue, okay? The bluer green color, okay, that cold green, is called viridian green, okay, or viridian hue, viridian. And this blue that has like a little bit of green in it, it's like brighter than the pure blue. It's a little warmer. You can tell it has a little bit more yellow in it. This is cerulean blue. Okay, and then black is black. Black is easy. And this color wheel, or circle of color, let's not call it a color wheel because it's technically not, should match my colors in my palette. Okay, so I know what's what. I can literally put them here to know their labels and lift it up to know what color they're going to make if you have a lot of water with it or if you have a lot of pigment with it up at the top. So they should kind of fade. And this is going to be your first watercolor exercise due to your digital sketchbook. Remember, we're doing these in our sketchbooks.